Hello there, Retro PC Durham, Chris here, and today we have not a PC. This, if you don't already recognize its iconic design, is an Apple iMac G5. And this came as part of a donation a while back, and yeah, I figured I'd make a video on it. Because it's kind of cool and neat. I'm not really an Apple person, never have been, never will be, but I do respect, some of the design philosophy around, products and computers especially, and this is one that does stand out. A lot of the iMac and Mac products do have some very interesting artistic design. So anyways, here it is. Very cool, very heavy, all-in-one PC design, or all-in-one Mac design, sorry. This plastic, like acrylic covering over top of the entire frame. There's a little bit of cracking on some of the edges here just based on its age. And I'm not sure if it got dropped or anything. It's still in full working order. Big, large chin strap here is iconic here. Downward firing speakers are built into the bottom, and then you've got your exhaust. So we'll take a look and flip around to the back and show what you've got going on in the back of the unit. Again, it's very, very plain, right? This is where your heat exhaust is. So there's a pair of fans that are in here to cool off the multiple section of the system. I'll show that in a minute when we open up the back. And then you've got all your port arrangements here. So some audio ports. There's a display. I believe this is like an Apple display output port. I'm not sure what the name of it is. Again, not being an Apple person. A couple USB 2.0 ports, a pair of FireWire ports, a modem and a gigabit Ethernet jack, and then our power button. And then if we just lay this down on its face very gently, when you look down on the bottom, here, let me adjust the camera here for a second. When you look down on the bottom, what they usually have is here, there's like a serial number and information about the product here. So this one is an iMac G5 20, I guess. There's a 1.8 gigahertz power PC processor. It had 1 gig of memory installed, which was 512 DIMMs. I have upgraded that. A 250 gig hard drive. And then there's it doesn't show here the graphics that are on here, which is usually shown on these ones, but it's got an FX 5200 GPU built into it as well. So not a terrible hardware spec for the time. We can actually open this thing up, and I'll just loosen up the screws here, and they're kind of not really screws. There's some kind of like latching system. It's not quite a captive screw. It almost reminds me of like the way IKEA has stuff on here to screw stuff. So you just have to unscrew 3 screws, kind of screws, and then this back panel will just pop away. And then at the very top of that, there's some notches that you kind of pop out of. So yeah, you can kind of see the little holes through there. You can kind of see through. That's where those notches line up at the back. So I will put this aside here, and I'm going to switch to a top-down view, and we can take a look at all the parts. Yeah, so as I mentioned, I did upgrade the memory. So there's a pair of 1 gig DDR DIMMs in here now for a total of 2 gig of RAM. The processor is, I think the way this works is if I were to remove everything and get this system board out, the other side of it is where the processor is if I wanted to repaste or something. I don't think you can actually remove this part here on the back where there's like a cooling assembly. There's a fan here and another fan here. So there's a dedicated fan for cooling off the processor. And then there's a secondary fan here, which is here to kind of suck air up over the rest of the components inside the system. Still the original hard drive. It's in good shape. I didn't need to replace it. And then there's an optical drive, a DVD drive over here. Oh, a little plastic tab here just broke off, I guess showing its age, that you can remove from if you needed to service it. And CMOS battery here that you could replace when that gets run low. All the caps seem to be in really good shape. No other issues there. Your power supply is integrated into this spot here. You can see it's got a separate connector. You can remove it from the system board if you needed to replace this component as well. Yeah, and that's basically what's going on here. And there's some empty space up at the top, which you don't need to fill with any hardware components, because this is the area that's going to get the warmest in the computer as it's running. So not having a lot of components up there is probably a good idea. Yeah, so I'm going to get the top put back on here, and we'll boot it up, I guess, and take a look at what's going on with OS X. All right, back up front. So again, the power button, as I mentioned, is just around the back here. We'll hit it, and we'll hear that classic Apple chime. All right, everything will start booting up here. So because of the age of this machine, it unfortunately is kind of out of the optimal second life range for general computing use. So from a security perspective, running modern software, etc. So in the PC world, it's kind of saying, well, if you can't run Windows 10 on it or a modern Linux distribution and have updated security, you can't really go online safely, so not really something that you could pass on for someone to use. It's kind of the same situation with this machine, right? This is I think the last or second last generation of Apple products that was before the move to Intel chips. And when you move to Intel chips, there's even kind of a gap where you've got the first generation or second generation of core products before you got to the versions that could update to a relatively modern version of OS X. So this is kind of left behind, not really capable. But that means it kind of qualifies now as being in the retro sphere of computing, where you kind of go back to remember what it was like when you were on PowerPC, or I guess it would have been IBM Silicon, would have been the thing, before the Intel days. Anyways, so the OS is running fine. As I mentioned, we upgraded the system. So if I go to the About This Mac and we take a look at the more info, might not be able to see this here. We'll move a little bit closer. And you can see there we've got the Power Mac 8.1. It's running G5, 1.8 gigahertz processor, 2 gig of RAM. And we are running, I remember here today as well, the version is Mac OS X version 10.5.8, which I believe is the last, might have been the last version that you could run on PowerPC without doing some wonky hack things to be able to make a newer version that can run. I remember looking online when I was researching for some older MacBook products that I had a while back, that there was there were some alternate versions that people had kind of cooked up that you could load up. But anyways, I left what was on here as is, and we just kept it going. As far as what you can do with a machine like this, there still is some stuff. I mean, if you've got your music library, right, you can run iTunes on this system and be able to hook up to your iTunes devices. You can connect up to the internet, and if you were to log in with your Apple account, you would be able to gain access to all of that content and be able to share it. So we can go to the radio station here, and maybe we'll try to pick something that's going to be not gonna get us in trouble. How about we go A_0 classical, right? So you can listen to some online internet radio. You still have access to that. I know it's a pretty big machine. You can get a smart speaker now for $60 that can do just this. But kind of a nice little desktop thing that you can do something like that still. And share that, or have your own music that you play. Let me just stop that. You also do have some ability to do some browsing. So I have a couple browsers installed here. This 10.4 Fox G5 seems to be, from a browser perspective on this platform, the most compatible or most up-to-date browser to be able to get some modern internet connectivity. It'll take a second here, I guess, to load up here. But this gives us some functionality to be able to go and browse the internet. We know we can get onto Google. We can go to, let's see, can we go to archive.org? If you want to get to some old software products, that still loads up okay, right? If we want to look at some really cheesy news reports with lots of ads hosted, we can go to MSN. Of course, MSN really isn't necessarily the best example of a browser that's modern because it'll run on a Windows 98 machine still, the way that they have it set up. Or if we wanted to maybe try something like YouTube, could we still run YouTube? I don't know, but we'll give it a try. Let's see if it'll load up now. I actually through my testing here, I don't think I even tested to see how well it would run. So we'll just do a remind me later when it comes to our browser stuff, because obviously we can't run one of the newer versions of these browsers that are recommended. And we'll see if it can actually load up anything at all. Maybe we'll do a little time skip to see if it jumps and actually finishes loading.
A few moments later.
All right, this should be super painful, as you can. Well, it took me about 6 minutes to get to this point in being able to run CrabRave, just from searching it up and then trying to get it to pause so I could change the resolution and get Stats for Nerds up. But we're buffered here, so we're going to run at 144p, just in window, no full screen, and see if it actually plays. Yeah. So, you know, Stats for Nerds is saying that we haven't dropped any frames at all, which I guess means that, you know, I'm not exactly sure, like, what does that mean from a perspective of what's going on in a rendering, right? It's capable of, I guess, decoding the software, but when it's actually trying to render it and put it up on the screen, it just can't do it, because what we're seeing on the screen is choppy and hitchy and terrible. And we're not even talking about the fact that it's in a 144p, which means it's just not good either. But basically what that means is when it comes to doing any kind of like streaming video, you're not going to have a good experience. So, you know, this is something that maybe, yeah, good thing it's got that optical drive in it, because maybe you could put a DVD in there. You've got old like kids DVDs or something that you can watch on this type of system. The other thing that we could do with this as well is if you want to have a little bit of retro gaming, right? Because of the power of this processor and having that FX 5200 for games that would run in this platform on the G5, you could have some fun gaming. So let's just take a look and see if we can do something with this machine when it comes to playing a game. Well, maybe you recognize what's coming up on the screen here. That's right. We're going to try a little bit of Doom 3. So this is the demo of the Power Mac or Power PC version of Doom 3. You'll notice from the resolution, this is running 640 by 480. All of the available resolutions in the game settings, I'm just going to scroll through here and show you. All of the settings here that are available are all in the same ratio, so we can't get the full widescreen view that's available for this screen, unfortunately. So we're running here 640 by 480 on low quality. I think if we can click on some of these advanced too, there's nothing in the advanced effects that allow us to do anything else. So we'll close advanced options and we'll just go to load game and take a look and see what's going on. I had to did a quick test here just to make sure that it would actually work, obviously, before starting doing the whole run through video. So there's an autosave here at the very start of the game. And I also wanted to just adjust some of the controls, because obviously I'm using, a track point keyboard. So, being able to have everything running all in one and moving around some of the controls for movement to the cursor keys instead of on WASD is always helpful. You'll see it does take a little bit of time to load, obviously, because we're running off of that spinning rust, I believe it's sometimes referred to as. But it does go. There's, even at the lowest settings here, there is quite a bit of textures and things that are trying to be loaded up on the system. So we're just at the very beginning of the game here, where you make that move.
To the dungeon, Marine. Most unexciting place on Mars. I'm gonna need you to grab some armor and secure your pistol before I can pass you through security. Okay, grab your gear. Now you're ready for combat. Let me do a radio test.
I don't have an FPS counter.
Excellent.
I was looking online to see if there was something that you could use, and there was an app.
Looks like you've been assigned the decommissioned comm facility. Just follow the main passage through the underground junction, then straight out.
Okay, thanks.
You'll have a quick evac. And what better way to see the Martian surface than to run across it?
Okay, thanks.
Okay, you're all set.
There was an app called.
Oh yeah, keep in mind.
Oh my God, shut up.
Working down here. Don't get excited and shoot at me.
There was an app called Count It, but I wasn't able to find anything for it. So.
Oh, haven't seen anyone new down this way in quite some time. Welcome to the dungeon.
But as far as the comfort here, right, we're at 640 by 480 with low detail. It seems to be pretty good. Like, it seems to be pretty sensitive. But it's hard to tell, right? It's hard to tell without some kind of tool up on the screen to be able to say, hey, I can see frame drops as you're trying to do stuff. But overall, it seems to be a pretty smooth experience. Doom 3 is a pretty demanding title, I would say, for this time period, for this type of hardware. If you were going to play something like GTA 3 or I don't know, Unreal Tournament 2004, or Quake 3, Half-Life 2 probably would be another title that would be a little bit challenging as well. But overall, this isn't a terrible experience. Of course, you also have to deal with the fact, you will be dealing with the fact that once you start getting into combat in this section of the game, or the next part of the game, you will have more going on the screen, so it could get worse. But I mean, this isn't terrible. It's an okay experience. I'm not going to continue on here, but at least we know it works. So if you did have older Mac games that you wanted to play, this may be the thing that you want to use. So that'll wrap it up for my look at this iMac G5. I hope you enjoyed watching it with me. If you have any advice for what you could do with an old system like this, if it still is usable, like, I'd hate to see something like this going and getting sent to e-waste. It's still in perfect working order. And, just my ignorance of Apple products and their use cases of what you would still be able to use for one of these systems as a, enthusiast collector, or whatever you would call it, from a retro computing perspective. So please drop in the comments down below any ideas that you have, or maybe if you still have one of these things, what do you use it for? And would you recommend for other people? Because I'm interested in knowing more about these, because I don't really have a lot of experience with Apple and Mac products, apart from the ones that my wife has owned over the years. I'm always interested in learning more about use cases, especially for retro gear, to keep things alive and to share with other people in the community. As always, I hope you are staying safe and healthy, and we'll catch you in the next one.